welcome back to the ADHD-Friendly podcast. I'm Patty Blinderman. I am an ADHD coach and host of this podcast where I bring all things ADHD-friendly in the hopes that it makes your life a little bit more easy to navigate. Today I'm talking about revisiting working memory, and I'm tying it to sugar. And how it came up for me this week was I was reading an article about the recommendation for how much sugar we should have a day in our diet. And the recommendation was given in grams. So it said that generally for women, 24 grams of sugar a day, and for men, 36 grams of sugar. That I had no way to understand, what does that mean? What does that look like? How many grams are in anything? How do I convert that to something I can make sense of? And that turned into an exercise in my own challenges with working memory. So if you want to deeper dive into working memory, I recommend you check out my podcast, episode 28, where I talked in more detail about that. But just for a quick way to connect to it, working memory in a nutshell is your ability, it's an executive function skill that's tied to your ability to take in short-term information into short-term memory and work with it, literally working with your memory. So an example is like mental math. And this is really what I was doing when I was trying to convert grams into something useful that I could understand. So I looked up how many grams are in a measurable teaspoon or tablespoon so I could make sense of it. And I found out that there are 4 grams in 1 teaspoon. Okay, well then I looked up, how many grams of sugar are in a serving of M&Ms, like I have here. So 32 M&Ms equals 1 serving, and it's 18 grams. 18 grams of sugar in a serving is 4.5 teaspoons of sugar. So it looks like this. I measured it out. That is really a concrete way for me to see it. When I was doing it in my head, that didn't work. I got fatigued really quickly. I noticed I couldn't hold on to the information. I think of it like a mental Post-it note where I was trying to hold my 2 to 3 things that my brain holds on to, right? If you think about writing a couple of things on here, it only fits so much before you're going to have to remove something to make something else fit. And that's a great metaphor for our working memory. So when I tried to convert 4 grams equals a teaspoon to how many grams are listed on packaging, I found myself getting fatigued. So I got out my phone. I didn't have a pen and paper near me. So I got out my phone and started writing it in my notes app. And I literally just started looking up what are some common things that I might eat, not really being aware of how much sugar's in them. So I started with M&Ms, and then I went to Raisin Bran, and again, doing all of that mental math and trying to capture it. And I was going between my notes app in my phone and my calculator on my phone to do the division to, see, well, how many teaspoons is that? Well, then how many teaspoons are in a tablespoon? If it ended up being a large number of teaspoons, and I'm not going to measure out that many teaspoons, how many tablespoons is that equivalent to? All of that mental math, that working back and forth, toggling between the 2 apps, my notes app and my calculator app, really started to create some mental fatigue. And I noticed it, which is why I went to physical, concrete representations. What does this actually look like? So I had to get out of the phone, which was a small screen, and me kind of typing with my thumbs, and it just wasn't working. As I was looking at more things, it became fatiguing. So then I just printed out what I had on my notes app. So I have a physical, concrete representation of the work I'd already done. And then I continued my work. So again, according to the Hartford School of Public Health, women, average recommendation is about 24 grams or 6 teaspoons of sugar a day. For men, 36 grams or 9 teaspoons of sugar a day. But overall, the recommendation from the FDA and Harvard School of Public Health is no more than 10% of your calorie intake be made up of sugar. Again, that's really hard to turn into concrete information that you can take and readily use. So I just want to share how I did it in terms of a few food items to get a sense of what it looks like, to help my brain process what that means and then make decisions more easily based on that information. So I shared with you the M&Ms. The other thing that had a similar amount of sugar to the M&Ms is Greek yogurt, Chobani Flip. This has almost equal amount to the M&M serving. So again, it has the 4.5 about teaspoons of sugar, which looks the same as it did for the M&M. So this much sugar in one little serving of the Chobani Flip yogurt. And then I went to, and my cereal's getting a little bit soggy, but then I went to Raisin Bran. And Raisin Bran is something I stopped eating about a year ago because my husband pointed out to me how much sugar was in it. And I didn't really believe that it had more sugar than like Captain Crunch, but it has more sugar than most sugary cereals. And so this is 1 cup of Raisin Bran in 3/4 of a cup of milk. It's now rather soggy, but this is actually a pretty small little bowl. And this one bowl, small bowl of Raisin Bran has 2 tablespoons of sugar, which looks like this. In 1 cup of Raisin Bran with 3/4 of a cup of skim milk. It's a lot of sugar. Now, full disclaimer here, I'm not a scientist. I'm not trained in medicine. So as I share at the end of my podcast, if there's something that I'm sharing that you're like, oh, okay, wait, Patty, that doesn't make sense, because you probably might know more about this than I do. I'm just coming at it from as a layperson and noticing how it's impacting my working memory. So always double check my really amateur research to confirm if there's something that doesn't add up, if you will. This is the bowl that came with my dish set. And this is I think, more probably Americanized size bowl that we would use for cereal. And this holds 3 cups of Raisin Bran. So 3 times the amount of sugar. It would be 6 tablespoons of sugar, which is roughly the equivalent of about 1/3 of a cup of sugar in a bowl of Raisin Bran. If you're having, a full bowl, 3 cups, it's a lot of sugar. I switched to Wheaties with raisins without sugar on them. I know raisins have their own like natural sugars, and that's different. That's where I'm saying, I'm not going to split out the differences there, but I'm just trying to highlight when we're trying to process this information. If you have weak working memory, that requires a lot of effort, and it might be an executive function that's impaired for you, that isn't maybe working at the level that's going to support you to do that with ease. And if you find yourself resisting it, what would make it easier to process this information? And it really is getting it out of your head and into something that you can physically hold or see. So visual and or concrete whenever possible. The last example I want to highlight, because I'm a big Chick-fil-A tea fan, having lived in North Carolina for so long. And this is Chick-fil-A small tea. I have to tell you, I was pretty frustrated trying to find out information about serving sizes when I went on Chick-fil-A's site. This is the amount of sugar in a Chick-fil-A small sweet tea, and it is 2.5 tablespoons in a small serving of Chick-fil-A tea. If you go on their site, they only share the drink size in grams. They don't tell you what it's equivalent to in terms of small, medium, or large. I had to do a lot of additional digging to learn that information. That was really where my brain just completely got overwhelmed and stopped and just kind of was like, that's it. My mental Post-it shrunk from its traditional size. It shrunk to a mini size where I didn't have as much access, and I just felt my brain getting literally fatigued. If, like me, you like a large tea when you go to Chick-fil-A, so I went ahead and got myself a large Chick-fil-A sweet tea. Now, personally, I don't get their sweet teas straight full on because it's too sweet for me. I get it what I call split, half and half, or my ideal is like 1/3 sweet to 2/3 unsweet. They love it when I do that, by the way. But if you're a full-on high octane sweet tea at Chick-fil-A for the large, it is 5 tablespoons of sugar in one large sweet tea from Chick-fil-A, tablespoons, 5 tablespoons. So that's more than 1/4 of a cup of sugar in 1 cup of large sweet tea from Chick-fil-A. So again, I wanted to represent these in concrete physical terms, just to highlight how that helps our brain to process and understand the information more, because it is concrete and visual, and it's giving us that easier way to take the data and make sense of it. So what I'm most trying to highlight here, and the reason that I was inspired to do this updated podcast on working memory, is if you notice you're needing to exert effort or you're resisting doing something that's going to require you to process information wherever it is. It could be around, like for me, reading grams of sugar and trying to make sense of that, or it could be trying to understand the price difference of some items when you're shopping, especially with all the inflation impacting us right now. Whatever it is, if you're trying to do that in your head using your working memory, if that's an area that you feel some resistance for, just my quick tip is get it out of your head and into something that you can manipulate. It could be like I did. I started out with my phone and just doing it in my notes app. But again, I noticed that started to be fatiguing. It's not my go-to, but I didn't have a handy pen and pencil and paper nearby. But once I noticed that I was getting fatigued, I knew that I needed to switch and get it to a piece of paper and a pen minimally. And then I even wanted to go further once I did that to the concrete representations. What does that look like for me? This gives me an easy way to make decisions, and I'm going to hold on to this visually much more easily than if I was just trying to manipulate the information in my own brain. So that's all for today's episode of the ADHD-Friendly podcast. As always, I strive to bring you information to bring a little bit more ease to your life in an ADHD-friendly way. If there's anything that didn't resonate for you or that you'd like to share some feedback on, always welcome you to reach out to me. I can be found by email, patty@addpositivefocus.com. That's patty@addpositivefocus.com. And as always, if you like this podcast, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, ADHD-Friendly Podcast, or follow me where you listen to this podcast. Until next time, tally ho.